Yes, my friends, it is OGP, the One Giant Podcast, where we are your host over here, Adam Armbrecht, over there, Andrew Makowitz. This episode is brought to you by Potential. It's actually a fun little platform, Andy, that allows you to have an online assessment tool, basically a survey that sets benchmarks and tracks your well-being and also gives you coaching tips to improve along the way. It tracks your progress as well. It's totally free for individual users, and you can check out Potential, PIETENTIAL.com for more information. That being the case, coaching news is the other thing we need to get to here for the New York Football Giants. They've been waiting patiently to get their guys in. Wilson with his second interview for DC. They got the linebacking coach for the Chiefs coming in. They still got Kafka, second interview with the Seattle Seahawks for their head coach. A lot of moving parts here. Do you feel like, especially when you look inside the division, do you feel like the Giants are are being patient with a process in mind, or maybe being a little bit too cautious around making decisions at the highest level? Because they did bring in special teams coordinator, they did bring in offensive line coach, right? But the big moves have to be made here.
You better hope that Joe Shane, that this is part of the plan, that they have maybe a nudge agreement with someone like, I don't know, Denard Wilson of the Baltimore Ravens to be the next coordinator. Because, Adam, while they're doing their due diligence and they're waiting and they're in no man's land in limbo with whether Mike Kafka is going to be their OC, other teams are hiring coaches at a rapid pace, especially in the division. Like, you look at
Yep.
what happened in Philadelphia, like, what's going to happen? There's all this turmoil. Nick Sirianni stays, and they get Vic Fangio, one of the great defensive minds, and Kellen Moore, which is a young offensive coordinator that might be able to bring more creativity to that team. You look at Ken Dorsey, who was a potential fit for the offensive coordinator position for the Giants. He got hired over the weekend. It's like, we talk about we talked before about musical chairs with the head coaches like Bill Belichick and Mike Vrabel. It's like the Giants may have offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator positions open, and half of the people that they would have wanted are not going to be available anymore. So you
Yep.
better hope and pray that you kind of have a little bit of an understanding with one of these coaches, whether it's for the Chiefs and Staley or Wilson and the Ravens. Like, you have all of your ducks in a row getting ready, because if not, this could get a little bit worrisome.
Yeah, the offensive side of things, if Kafka were to leave, you feel a little more confident because Brian Dable, that's his side of the ball. But you have all these pieces, right? You have Kayvon Thibodeau. What's going to happen with Xavier McKinney, Bobby Okereke, right? All these things are there. So how they get maximized is predicated on who you put in place. If you have confidence in one of these linebacker DB coaches from another team, that's okay. You can be patient and wait for them, and we can get news in the next 10 seconds, right? And feel confident about it. The other side of it is just the Giants have a lot of moving parts from a roster perspective. You really, at this moment, you wouldn't say they have stability in any key department of their team necessarily. And that's concerning when you're coming out of a 6-win season, knowing how important this year 3 is going to be for GM Joe Shane and also for Brian Dable. One note, can I just throw in this little thing here before we get out the door?
Hit me.
Because we just mentioned the defensive side of the ball. We mentioned Kyle Hamilton before. You made this note. Well, let's get to him here for this reason. When we were talking during the Baltimore Ravens game, you and I said, man, Hamilton, this dude is a lightning bolt firing downfield. He's stepping up into coverage, all these different things. And you shot back. I don't want to say a disrespectful blow across Hamilton's bow, but you gave an explanation why he's so good. What was your reasoning for why Hamilton can be as effective as he is for Baltimore?
I'm going to get a lot of flack for this, but Kyle Hamilton is great. We, on the podcast, had said we don't want the Giants to draft him in the first round because there were quite a few other positions and holes they had to fill. He
Of
fits
course.
so perfectly into Baltimore and everything that Baltimore wants to do defensively. It's
Yep.
scary how, like, that was a match made in heaven. But you were saying, man, Kyle Hamilton's all over the place, and he was. He literally was everywhere in the backfield, pressuring Mahomes, getting up, out in coverage. He was doing everything. And it just made me realize that Roquan Smith is the person on Baltimore's defense that allows them to do all of this stuff. It's almost like when you look at Ed Reed and how amazing he was for
Mm.
those Baltimore Ravens teams, and thinking about the middle, the heart and soul of being Ray Lewis, like, he cleans up all the mistakes. Roquan Smith allows Kyle Hamilton to roam the field and be free and be able to be put in all these crazy different positions for success, to make Mike McDonald's defense look exotic and unique and pass rushers from everywhere. When you have a guy in the middle that can go side to side end line to end line, and be able to get up in the face of the quarterback, tackle effectively, it frees up your secondary to be able to be ultra creative. And maybe me saying that takes a little bit away from Kyle Hamilton, but it's really to say, like, that's how important Roquan Smith can be. And it just kind of reminded me of like how the Giants may have a unique situation on their hands when it comes to Xavier McKinney and Bobby Okereke.
That was the cliffhanger we'll leave everybody on here. Do we think, as we're on the precipice of re-signing Xavier McKinney, giving him 12, 13, 14, tagging him at $17.5 million, do we look back on, obviously, an injury, a rookie season for him, 70 PFF minimum reps, 75.4 in his second season, in 2022, an absolute abysmal year for him, 57.8, and then skyrockets in 2023 to an 87.8. Now it's second year inside of the Wink Martindale system. It's the first season underneath Wink Martindale without wearing the green dot. And who wore the green dot? Why, it was Bobby Okereke, right? So having that leader in the linebacker room, by the way, makes everybody's job easier, right? Makes everyone's play better. But this correlation, and this is what matters for a good defense: safety, linebacker, defensive tackle, right? Right up the gut, being able to identify and stymie the opposition up the middle of the field. I just find it fascinating to look at that Hamilton scenario and say he can be a really good player, but obviously you want to pair them with really good talent in front of him. Likewise, is Bobby Okereke an elevator for a lot of these players on the defensive side of the ball? Xavier McKinney, chief among them, even if it's simply saying, I can see the plays, I can read the offense, and I can let you know where the easiest path for success is going to be for you, right? Those things really matter on the defensive side of the ball. I think it's something worth paying attention to here, especially when the Giants have Pinnock, especially when they have Dane Belton, especially when you have options going to the draft to continue to replenish a position that has a very high price tag on free agency for a guy like McKinney.
Bobby Okereke, 78 Pro Football Focus rating. It just so happens that Xavier McKinney lined up with his best career year when Bobby Okereke was there. And we mentioned how good
And a
Jason
year
Pinnock was.
prior, total garbage at the linebacker spot for the Giants. Oh, by the way, right?
Right.
Like, there's also
Yeah,
a
like
correlation there.
moving off of Blake Martinez and trying to figure out who's in the middle. Like now, all of a sudden, Bobby Okereke is there, and guess what? Jason Pinnock looked pretty good this past year. Dane Belton in his snaps looked pretty good this year. Xavier McKinney looked pretty good, and like that's to my point. It's like when you have stability in the middle of the field on the defense, and you can rely on a tackling machine. It allows you to feel like you can be more creative, and you have the ability to be ultra aggressive because you have someone that has your back in the middle.
Listen up here, friends. Before we get out the door, we want you to know, obviously, if you're thinking about having a strong defense, you want to make sure that you're detecting all of the areas in which the opposition could kind of get through and crack your lines. That's why you might want to think about having your own version of Personam. Personam is an AI-driven cyber threat detection engine. It improves your vision into your network security environment and allows you to see cyber threats that other tools and platforms just can't do. Personam is always vigilant, always learning. Check out Personam today. And we say, this is the theme as we move towards the Super Bowl and we think about the offseason for the Giants. That's next up for us, the discussion about all the free agents the Giants have. Who needs to come back? Where's the money going to be? What are the players they should be bringing in? How do you maximize the value of each position when you know you do not have Patrick Mahomes under center and you know the closest thing to a Christian McCaffrey may be walking out the door? You need to be a well-run organization. That's why you see the Chiefs. That's why you see the 49ers right back in the Super Bowl again, because they have the track record of finding different ways to be successful. Until that next time, though. You get us on YouTube at One Giant Podcast. You get us over on Twitter, One Giant Podcast, at AndyMac214, at Adam Armbrecht. You subscribe on YouTube. You give us the 5-star review. And by the way, we're going to have a new sponsor coming up next week. We really, really, really appreciate. Go check out our sponsors, because seeing the movement for them through us means that we get to keep growing, keep expanding. If you like us, support us, love us. We really appreciate it. Until next time, as Andrew Mackwitz would want, need, and nay, demand that people know.
As always, let's go Big Blue.